The story begins when a girl is being chased by some men. Meanwhile, in a tavern, some guy tells the guests, who are now weary of him, a famous story. This story is about the last battle between Tianwu and Mowu 10 years ago. In that story, their magical continent was under the leadership of the Tianwu Temple, and thus peace reigned. However, there was a bloody battle against the Mowu Temple, who are extremely cruel and have evil powers. The Mowu started the war to occupy the continent, and they had a person named Master Wu as their leader. Somewhere else, the lady keeps avoiding the attacks of the men, who use great magic powers against her. In the tavern, the boy who was speaking referred to Master Wu as a dragon king who was invincible, whose power is only matched by Feng Tianqing. Eventually, the men corner the lady, but she avoids their attacks and knocks them down. In the tavern, the boy demonstrates that Feng gave a celestial punishment of the soul that astonished all the gods and took down and eliminated the Dragon King. After his story, the people clap for him, but some other guy calls out the boy, whom he refers to as Dog Chu. The guy asks Chu if he thinks he's Feng's successor and will inherit his will. Chu recognizes the person speaking as Zifeng and asks him why he came there, so Z explains that it's to uncover the lies of someone who has no magic powers. Z explains that Chu is a useless person who can't inherit Feng's will, and they get into an argument. In the flashback, the lady keeps running from two of the men that she wasn't able to take down. She blasts one of them with her power, but he blocks it with his swords and keeps chasing her. Eventually, she climbs on a roof, but the man ambushes her through a portal and releases an explosive energy to break through the roof. After the explosion, the men are ambushed by the people living in the settlement because they're destroying things and unsettling their peace. When the people attempt to call the guard, the men realize that the spy lady has escaped and they try to find her. At the restaurant, Chu insists that Feng Qian has saved him, but Zai claims he's lying. While they argue, Chu's mom comes and catches him telling stories again. He's glad to see her and asks her to back him up, but she slaps him with a spoon and tells him to get back to work. Later, Chu laments to Z that his mother is too evil and hits too strongly. Later, he asks Z why he had to ask his mother to make him carry this jar for him. Z nonchalantly explains that his family invited exterminators to Tianwu Academy and they had no alcohol left to host them. Intrigued, Chu asks why the Tianwu Academy selection started early this year and asks Z if he believes there is a resurrection sign of Mo Wu, just like people say. Z says he doesn't know, but decides to tell Chu another version of the war that happened 10 years ago. In Z's version, the Dragon King was defeated but didn't die. As such, the Temple of Mo Wu has been looking for opportunities to return, and he believes that's why the Tianwu has decided to recruit early this year. Z doesn't see this as a problem, and mentions that it's possible that a place called the Qian'an Citadel really has a spy of Mo Wu. This intrigues Chu, who seems to only be interested in listening to the latest conspiracy theories about the war. Chu believes that heroes are born in times of distress, and he believes this present era is his chance. After saying that, Z literally slaps some sense into him and asks him how he plans to do that without any magical powers. Z wonders how he could have such a useless brother like Chu for 10 years and reminds him he has no magical powers. However, Chu insists that he'll get into the Tianwu Academy and will be recognized as Yudamon Master. Eventually, Z asks Chu if he thinks the entrance exam is simple, and explains that his father brought 13 Yudamon masters to help teach him so he could get approved. However, Z isn't really interested in getting into Tianwu, and he just wants to die. Meanwhile, Chu thinks he's lucky because his mom just wants him to just keep working the business. Later, Chu wonders if he could also get his mother to help him get some Yudamon masters, but Z reminds him once more that he has no magical powers, and all his practice won't matter. He reminds him that the top Yudamon masters grade the test, and the mortality rate is more than 30%, which means he'd die even though he's brave. Regardless, Chu insists this is his chance to make his dreams come true, so he decides to show Z some of the things he knows. Shortly after, Chu shows Z a martial demonstration, but Z can't stop himself from laughing after seeing it. While they're talking, they notice the men chasing the woman on top of the buildings. While Z tries to read the situation, Chu hopes they're evil spies and runs towards them so he can prove himself. However, Z is only bothered that the foolish boy ditched him to carry the stuff home. Later, the men track the spy into the woods, and Chu watches them from the top of a tree. He realizes the men are quite evil and fast, but the only reason he's able to keep up with them is because he's familiar with the forest. He notices the men running again, so he decides to follow after them so he can get a chance of getting into the Tianwu Academy. Eventually, he loses them but runs into a stream of bright green insects that scare him. He decides to follow the trail, and it leads him to the woman the men are chasing, who is sitting on a strange tree. Suddenly, the other men appear near the tree and prepare to end the woman because they believe she's cornered. Intrigued, the woman comes down with the help of the tree's vines and tells the men that they can't be too sure she's the prey. Suddenly, her body is engulfed by a bright power, so the men rush to attack her. Before they can do so, Chu shouts loudly and runs towards them. But as he runs, huge vines protrude out of the ground, and the lady realizes that this egghead is triggering the traps she set. Eventually, Chu runs past them until the vines catch his leg, and he screams for help. The woman believes he's an enemy and attempts to take him out, but he falls on top of her and injures her. Eventually, Chu tries to introduce himself, and he tells the lady that he's here to help her. Later, he turns to the men and calls them bad people for chasing a young lady, and even accuses them of being Mo Wu spies who set up these traps. Confused, the men refer to him as brother and try to explain, but Chu tells them to save him the stories. Eventually, Chu tells the lady to lead these guys to him and threatens the men to run away before he attacks. Now tired of his yapping, the men try to come close to speak, but he stops them. Chu informs them he's informed the Yudamon masters of Tianwu of the city and they'll soon be coming. Confused, the men ask Chu who he is, but when the lady gets up to attack, the men blast with fire so she doesn't attack. Shocked, Chu jumps on the woman again to protect her from the blast, injuring her further. Strangely, the woman notices that her spiritual energy drains when Chu touches her. The men proceed to finish off the lady, but they're unable to because they don't want to hurt Chu, who's a random citizen. Eventually, Chu turns to the men again and proceeds to fight them, but their leader tells him to let them explain. Chu doesn't listen and does the same martial movements he did before, so the men hide for cover because they believe he has powers. However, nothing happens, and Chu signals to the lady to run. When he turns around, he sees a dangerous plant called a demon flower. At that point, our boy realizes he's cooked. Meanwhile, the lady escapes into the forest but suddenly encounters a dark being. When she fires at it using her magical powers, a person named Shui Ya appears out of the darkness and tells her she's late. The lady explains that she had a small problem, but it's already solved. On the field, our stupid MC runs away from the demon flower, who's now chasing him, and he's facing the consequences of having an egg for a brain. Sadly, the other men have been eliminated by the plant, and Chu keeps running. Deep in the forest, Shui asks the spy woman how the Tianwu are doing, so she informs him that someone named Lai An has suddenly increased the number of guards. Shui realizes that someone important must be coming, and the test is very important, so he asks the lady, whom he refers to as Lan Ruo Bing, to participate in the upcoming exam. He asks her to pass the exam so she can infiltrate the system and get information about the Dragon King. Shui reminds her that someone named Mr. Dark Moon will not allow any problems for her so the Tianwu don't notice her. He explains that she'll be disguised as a man, but adds that suicide with poison is the last option if she's discovered. Meanwhile, the plant corners Chu, and he wonders how he ended up like this. As the monster's about to impale him, he blacks out. Suddenly, a small voice speaks to him and asks him if he wants power. In the woods, Shui gives Lan a magic layer device that can change her gender, but he reminds her a Mo Wu must die as a Mo Wu. In the field, Chu seems overtaken by a strange power that causes his eyes to turn red. Suddenly, a huge light bursts out of the spot and Chu destroys the plant with one swipe of his hand, then passes out. Later, Chu wakes up in an inferno and sees a demonic beast ravaging people in the fire. He soon wakes up in bed, and his mom is glad he's awake. He's also glad to see her, but she almost cuts off his head with a frying pan that eventually lodges in the wall. Suddenly, his mom becomes angry that she sent him out to take an order, but he dropped it halfway. Apparently, she went to find him but found him sleeping in the forest. Chu tries to explain to her, but she keeps smacking him before he can explain. After that, she tells him to get up because an important person is coming to their establishment for a blind date with him. Shocked, Chu laments that he's too young and he still has to do the Tianwu exam, but his mom tells him he's going to die in the exam. She adds that large families aren't interested in him, so he has no choice but to have this blind date. Man, a world where guys are the ones receiving suitors, isn't this paradise? However, Chu insists that he's going to go for the Tianwu exam and gets into an argument with his mom. When she gets angry, he blacks out and finds himself tied to a pillar upside down. When he begs her, she tells him she's going to go buy him some things for his blind date with the big family. When she leaves, Chu throws a tantrum because he wants to go for the Tianwu exam, and the door suddenly swings open. He hopes it's his mother, but it turns out to be a drag queen that calls him husband. The guy snags him out of the pillar and hugs him, calling him his husband. When he tries to kiss Chu, urging that they take advantage of the time, Chu tells the drag queen, Miss Fang, to respect herself. Meanwhile, Z laughs hysterically outside and eventually dismisses the drag queen. Confused, Chu asks Z what's going on, so Z tells him he's the father-in-law of the Fong family that's coming to have a blind date with him. Meanwhile, Lan, who's now a guy, comes back into the city under Shui's orders. Nearby, Chu runs away from Z and later knocks down Lan. Later, they apologize to the person they knocked down, but Lan recognizes Chu and wonders how he survived. Immediately, she throws them backwards with magical powers and seals the door of the examination location so that Chu can't take the exam. However, Z drags Chu with him so they can find another way. Inside the location, Lan goes to sign up. Chu and Z soon show up behind her, and Chu soon learns the guards from the previous night were from Z's family home. When Z spots Lan, he demands to know why she would attack them because of a mistake. When an argument develops, a woman appears and stops them. She tells them screaming is against the rules and tells them to group up, referring to them as losers. Meanwhile, Lan realizes she can't let Chu write this exam and she has to find a way to get him out of here. Chu soon pushes out his tongue at Lan, but Z asks him to cut it out because teacher Sha Mu is speaking. Z also tells him the people in the purple clothing are the famous ones from the sect of the sword, and the one in the middle is a great disciple named Lin Yang Tian. He adds that the girl behind is named Xiao Yi Yi, a reputable genius. Z also tells him about another guy named Bai Lang, who's said to be stronger than he seems. When Chu asks him if he knows about the boy they encountered, Z says he has no information about him and advises Chu not to get on his bad side. However, Chu insists that he's not afraid of this guy and turns around to push out his tongue. Immediately, Sha tells him to get out if he plans to stop talking. Immediately, everyone turns to Chu and recognizes him as the son of the woman who owns a restaurant. They mention he's always telling stories and had mentioned that he will inherit Feng Tian's will. That makes the crowd laugh, so Chu asks them what's funny. He insists that he wants to become a man like Feng Tian, but they laugh him to scorn. Eventually, Sha shuts them up and explains that the organization will not take responsibility for any injury they incur. Apparently, the first test is the perception test, which will happen in the forest of Eudemon. The candidates are to use their magical powers to detect the location of the Eudemon in the forest and capture them. They're to capture beasts of rank 3, and some of the students believe they're too small. Suddenly, Sha opens a portal and tells them only the first 200 will pass the test, and the rest will return home. Immediately, the students rush in, but Lan knocks Chu down while they're running. However, Z comes to help him up. Later, the students look around the forest for the beast. One student catches an unsuspecting ostrich, while another looks for a beast he's sensing behind a bush, but he doesn't know the beast is cracking its knuckles behind him to give him a good whooping. The beast soon unleashes smaller monsters at the guy, and the guy makes a run for it. Meanwhile, Chu asks how everyone else is finding monsters, so Z tells him he can't since he doesn't have spirit. Chu insists he'll use his eyes, so Z ditches him and wishes him good luck. When Chu learns that one person has already passed the test, he quickly starts to search. He believes he has a good sense of smell and used to come to the forest as a kid, so he believes it'll be easy to capture a few Eudemons. He tries to look for footprints and finds one. Following the print, he finds a Eudemon that's just chilling around. Before he can attack, a small green circle appears behind Chu's back, causing the little guy to run away. At that point, Chu learns that there are only 82 spots left. Later, he finds another monster, but the monster runs away from the green circle behind him too. At this point, 122 spots are left, Moments later, the same thing happens with some ostriches, but only one spots are left. After a few more Eudemons run away from him, Chu becomes overwhelmed, but only 62 spots are left now. He almost goes crazy and prays that God gives him a Eudemon because he doesn't want to go back and be forced to marry Fang. Suddenly, he notices some students running because an Eudemon tiger is chasing them. Chu tries to run, but the tiger knocks him down because he didn't move slowly. While on the ground, Chu realizes God fulfilled his wish, but he wishes it wasn't such a big one. His leg is now bleeding, and he realizes he can't move. The tiger soon towers over him, so Chu tries to crawl away and calls out for help. When that doesn't work, Chu realizes this is where it ends. When the tiger growls at him, the green circle appears behind him again, and the tiger vomits in disgust and runs away. Annoyed, Chu insults the monster and wonders why even the tiger doesn't want to eat him. While he's lamenting, Lan listens nearby and walks away. Meanwhile, Chu's mom returns home and is shocked to find Fang. In the forest, Chu calls out to the tiger Eudemon and laments that the entire forest hates him. His leg is terribly hurt, and he's suddenly approached by Xiao Yi, who asks him if he's okay. For a moment, Chu is awestruck by her beauty and doesn't speak. When she notices he's wounded, she tells him to hold still and uses her magic to heal him. When Chu confirms if her name is Xiao, she affirms and brings up how he said he wants to become like Feng Tian. Suddenly, she starts to blush and asks him if he meant it, and Chu stammeringly admits that he did. Eventually, she confesses that she also wants to do something, but before she can speak, another teammate named Lin calls her to come help them. After Lin calls her, Xiao apologizes and leaves to go help her team. When Xiao approaches Lin, he tells her not to bother with losers, so she apologizes. Moments later, the organizers announce that there are only 9 slots left, so Chu starts to panic that he's going to be forced to marry Fang. Suddenly, he gets an idea, and he decides to go execute it. Shortly after, Eudemon Tiger spots a scarecrow in the middle of the road that has a nasty smell. Because of the nasty smell, the tiger turns to the other side but also runs into Chu. Eventually, he goes the other way but gets trapped by a hole that Chu dug. After trapping the tiger, Chu knocks it out with a huge rock and drags it through the forest. While dragging the monster, Lan throws some leaves on it. At this point, only 1 spot is left, but Zi and Xiao patiently wait for Chu to come out. Moments later, Teacher Xia announces that the test has ended, so the Tianwu warriors start to close the portal. Before they can close the portal, Chu jumps out and tells him he's also caught a Eudemon. When they ask him to show the Eudemon, he pulls it out, and it turns out to be a small creature. Teacher Mu thinks he's lying, and the students start to make fun of Chu, requesting he be expelled. However, Master Xia suddenly notices a strange energy from the being in Chu's hands and realizes that the being has an enchantment on it. Master Xia figures that a spy must be among the students, but she decides to investigate later. Eventually, she announces that Chu has passed the exam, but the other students aren't happy about it. While they move on to the next test, Lan decides that she will use more serious measures to take care of Chu. For the next test, Xia leads everyone to a dark bridge called the Shengyuan Bridge. She offers to let those of them who are afraid go and explains that the first 50 of them to cross the bridge and meet her before dawn will pass. Suddenly, Chu starts to scream because the little monster he brought keeps bugging him. When Xia notices that, she consumes the monster in a portal to hold on to it. Moments later, the students start running to cross the bridge, but Chu doesn't move. Z, who also hasn't moved, asks Chu why he isn't moving. Chu explains that the strong students aren't moving because they know the test isn't so simple, or else they wouldn't be given so much time. Chu explains that he's waiting for Teacher Xia to move, and Z becomes proud that his intelligence is finally rubbing off on Chu. While he's still gloating, he notices that Chu and the rest have started running after the teacher, who has also moved. Soon after, they're all running into the thick fog. When the fog becomes thicker, the students realize Teacher Xia is gone. Meanwhile, Xia runs forward and ditches the students. However, 2 students follow her, but she smiles because there is more to the test. Lan and another guy follow Xia to a point where they find corpses on the ground. When Xia suddenly leaps with magic, the other guy jumps on the ropes to follow her. However, Lan keeps running on the ground and notices small monsters jumping towards her from the ground. She manages to wade some of them off and distracts them with one of her vines because they love absorbing spiritual power. When she continues moving, the bugs move, and she notices that the bugs are perceptive to sound and not sight. She decides to use this to take out Chu, even if others get hurt in the process. Eventually, she casts a spell and continues on the ropes of the bridge. Behind, Chu and Z find the students who had gone before them dried up, and they stop. However, the students behind them continue running forward, and they're suddenly ambushed by the monsters. When the monsters attack Zai, he knocks them down with his small daggers. Meanwhile, Lin tells his teammates not to panic, and they gather around to create something called a seal of protection. The seal creates a barrier around them, and Chu finds that fascinating, while Z keeps fighting to protect him. As one monster is about to eliminate Chu, Z jumps on him, and they both end up in a compromising position. Meanwhile, one of the bugs manages to eat through the barrier of the other group and takes down one of them. Suddenly, Xiao notices the monsters are avoiding one guy who's just sitting on the ground crying, so she crawls towards him despite Lin's protests. When she crawls, the monsters also avoid her, so Lin tells the others to silently follow her from behind. The same way, the monsters avoid them, so Chu and Z decide to do the same thing. While they're moving forward, a magic circle suddenly appears around them, and Lan's vines suddenly sprout around them. The vines attract the monsters, and Xiao notices the monsters are consuming the vines as life force. While the monsters are distracted, Xiao suggests they move forward, but they soon realize there's a huge vine monster in front of them that won't let them pass. The bugs keep taking out the guys that are trying to put up a fight, while Chu and the others are stopped by the huge monster. They wonder if it's the king of the bugs that was attracted by the vines, so they try to avoid it without making noise too. When they move, the monster knocks out one of them and sucks out his life essence, so they realize it can detect them. Immediately, Lin activates their protective barrier. Meanwhile, Z throws his daggers at the monster, but they only bounce off. Eventually, the monster throws a huge punch that breaks down their barrier. Immediately, Lin asks Xiao to use a fire enchant on his sword, so he goes to face the monster. Using the fire ability of his sword, he cuts off the monster's tentacles, but is unable to leave a mark on the monster. Eventually, the monster creates a magic circle above it, and it surprises them that a monster can use magic. As they're about to react, the monster releases a wave of green energy that turns all of them into stone, except for Chu, who is protected by Xiao's shield. This guy would definitely be dead at this point if not for his ridiculous luck. Xiao explains that the monster has petrified the men, and the monster breaks through her barrier once more and captures them. After capturing them, it wraps them in a ball of its tentacles, and they're in big trouble. Meanwhile, Xiao reaches the other end of the bridge and the two students follow her there. She's amused and tells them to rest because they passed the test. When Lan walks away, the other guy watches her with a strange expression. However, Lan only hopes that she's been able to take care of Chu. On the bridge, Chu wakes up somewhere he doesn't know and wonders if he's dead. He realizes this is very familiar to him and starts to recede into the comfort of the void. Suddenly, a demonic voice calls his name and a magic seal appears before him. Shocked, Chu wonders if he's about to be sent to hell, but the spirit asks him if he remembers him. Suddenly, Chu remembers what happened the previous night and recognizes the spirit. Still dumbfounded, he asks the spirit who he is, but the spirit tells him there are people afraid of his power and they've sealed him in Chu's body. However, the spirit explains that he'll give Chu great power to help his friends if he removes the seal. When Chu recalls what happened to his friends, the spirit tells him to touch the seal with his hand, and he'll transcend from being garbage to someone with great powers. Since he wants to be strong, Chu tries to touch it but suddenly hesitates. He questions the spirit to know if he's being tricked because he doesn't understand why they'd seal away a helpful and powerful spirit. The spirit admits that Chu is intelligent but tells the boy that this doesn't concern him because he can show him real power. Immediately, the spirit releases power into Chu's body, and the boy starts to feel the great strength of an Eudemon. When Chu is excited by the power, the spirit tells him to stop asking questions and save his friends. When Chu recalls the situation on the bridge, he immediately touches the seal. Immediately that happens, Shaw feels strange. Even though the exam is about to end, only 2 people have passed, which is odd even though the exam was hard. She wonders if there was an incident. Meanwhile, Sui meets with Lan in the forest, and Shui tells her that she could have reached her goal earlier if she hadn't done what she did. She tells him it's none of his business, but he reminds her that her mission is to infiltrate the organization and get information. Sui points out that continuing like this will make Tianwu suspicious and may get her caught. Suddenly, Shui feels a strange aura that belongs to the Dragon King, and that shocks the both of them. On the bridge, the covering the monster created explodes, and Chu bursts out with great power all over him. The monster immediately regenerates its tentacles and tries to attack again, but Chu blasts it away with one wave of his hand. When the instructors hear the explosion, Shaw realizes that something abnormal is happening. She immediately goes with other instructors to check on the student. In the forest, Shui is excited that the Dragon King is revived because he can feel his aura on the bridge. Lan is skeptical, but Shui decides to go check it out. On the bridge, Chu is now possessed by the Dragon King and his arm has been broken. When the Dragon King notices this, he wonders what kind of nonsense body can't win against a low-level monster, so he decides to absorb the spiritual pearl of the monster to gain some power. After doing that, Xiao wakes up and notices Chu walking towards her. Suddenly, the Dragon King lifts her up with magic and recognizes her as good food, since she has pink Eudaimon power, which is hard to get. Surprised, Xiao asks him who he is since he's not Chu, but the Dragon King suddenly notices Chu fighting back from inside of him because of a purifying bell that Xiao is using. However, the Dragon King laughs because it doesn't work on him, and he starts to absorb Xiao's power to make her a part of him. Immediately, the Dragon King feels a blast behind him and drops the girl. Suddenly, the same seal that held him appears again and he collapses because this body is too weak to fight against an enemy who once sealed him. The people who sealed Chu turn out to be an old man and a young woman named Wen He. Immediately, the old man, who's a director, tells Wen to destroy the memory of what just happened, and she does that. The director is glad that the seal was only slightly tampered with, and he doesn't know what would have happened if they didn't get here quickly. He tells Wen to watch Chu closely to ensure nothing wrong happens. When Wu asks about the others, the director explains that they'll recover soon since the king bug has died. Shortly after, the instructors appear and find the students. Later that morning, Chu wakes up and is shocked to find himself shirtless. Shortly after, Lin shows up and accuses him of being shameless for playing with his dear Xiao. Confused, Chu tries to explain the misunderstanding, but his trousers soon fall off, shocking Xiao further. This annoys Lin, who explains that they found him on top of his partner Xiao. When Lin brings out his sword, Xiao tries to calm him down and explains that she also doesn't remember anything that happened on the bridge. While they're arguing, Instructor Xia tells them to shut up. She orders them to go to a big tree and wait, so Xia asks Lin to calm down. Lin decides to hold his peace, but he promises to make Chu pay. Shortly after, Xia explains to the students that the king of bugs that appeared on the bridge wasn't part of the test and adds that the Tianwu school will perform an investigation. Because of this, the survivors are allowed to pass the test regardless of if they reach the end or not. Later, Xia calls Chu and asks if he's sure the thing with him is a Eudaimon tiger. When he agrees it is, Xia tells him he's right and he can participate in the third exam. That makes Chu excited, but Xia is amused, and she remembers how the king bug was destroyed and wonders where Chu really came from. Later, Xia covers the portal that leads to the Tianwu school with a barrier that can resist any attacks and defend against foreign invasion. So, she asks the students to follow her into the portal because those who are accepted can pass through it. The students start to rush in, but Z asks Chu if he doesn't really remember anything from the bridge, and Chu admits he doesn't. Oddly, Chu doesn't seem to care. Meanwhile, Lan believes Chu is cursed. Shortly after, the students pop out on the other side and see a beautiful sight of the Tianwu Academy. They see something popularly referred to as the God Tree and see beautiful houses on it. While they marvel, Xia calls them to order and explains that the Mo Wu Temple invaded this place 18 years ago under the leadership of the Dragon King. That battle was the fiercest on the continent, and although Tianwu fought valiantly, they began to lose. During that time, a young Eudaimon defeated the Dragon King on his own, and the tide was reversed. Even though they won, the temple of Tianwu was destroyed. It was Feng Tian who established the Tianwu Academy and created defense enhancements to protect the environment. It was this focus on defending Tianwu that has allowed their continent to progress. When Xia finishes her story, Chu is the only one in tears because of how touching the story is. Later, Xia leads the students to a place they can live since they're not students of Tianwu yet. To their surprise, it turns out to be an old place, so they complain. However, Xia tells them to shut it and explains that they're actually living in the nearby well. She also informs them that they'll get a new teacher named Do Yin. The students clap and look around until a small-looking person tells them to stop, and it's clear it's Master Do Yin. Do Yin explains that he's in charge of internal exams and tells the students to remember his name, but the students struggle to contain their laughter. While Do Yin dishes out his rules and runs out, one of them laughs, so Do Yin kicks him in the face and launches him several feet backwards. He immediately immediately tells the others to get to the entrance of the well and confirms from Sha that Chu is the one he has to watch closely. Later that night, Do-yin and the students meet inside the well, and he tells them to meet him at the entrance by 8 a.m. When one student asks him how they'd find him, Do says he's an expert in reading minds and he can know when they say his name in their minds. This shocks the students, so Do does a demonstration by telling several of them their deepest secrets. When he discloses their secrets, they're forced to align, and he tells them to go look for their homes in the underground city. Later, Z finds a dark room filled with vines and he's shocked he'll be living there. Meanwhile, Lin crashes through his bed while Xiao runs from a dirty carpet. Lin crashes through his bed and into the lower floor where Z is staying, and Z almost loses his mind because of this ridiculous place. However, Chu is quite excited that they were sent to a place whose wall is filled with vines, low light, and pretty mushrooms. He even pops the mushroom in his mouth and starts to cry because of how good it is. While Z is lamenting because a noble like him can't be going through this, a beautiful lady comes to ask him for help because her door isn't closing. Immediately, Zai's countenance changes and he brings out a rose out of thin air. While that's happening, Lan finds the room labeled number 9. Meanwhile, Zai tries to be a macho man and help the girl pry out her door with strength, but he ends up destroying the whole door. When he gladly tells her it's now open, she tells him to piss off because she can't live in a room without a door. However, Z calms her down and assures her there's a solution. But his solution is to go beg Master Do. Regardless, Do tells him he has to pay for the door. Z soon bursts into Chu's room while he's enjoying his mushrooms and drags him out to come help him. When they slam the door, the number 6 on Chu's door becomes 9. Shortly after, Lan finds the room labeled number 9, but when she enters, the Yutamon with Chu runs out in fear. When Lan enters, she wonders what it's doing here and realizes the room isn't the best. Meanwhile, Z drags Chu to help him get wood so they can fix the door. Suddenly, Chu begins to complain of stomach pain, so Z tells him to go away. In the room Lan entered, she goes into the bathroom to bathe, and Chu soon arrives and finds the door locked. Because he's pressed, he pushes the door open and rushes into the bathroom. When he sees Lan undressed, he starts to bleed from the nose and apologizes for intruding when she begins reacting in shock. As he apologizes, he recognizes her as the woman from the forest, but she releases destructive vines in him and knocks him out. When she's about to take him out, she hears some students trying to enter because of the noise, so she makes a run for it. Meanwhile, in the woods, 2 people meet Shui through a portal and explain that the job they were given went very well. In the inn where the students are lodged, Chu remains knocked out, and an announcement is given that those who are late to the well entrance will be disqualified. Shortly after, Chu wakes up and almost has a heart attack when he hears the announcement. Shortly after, the students gather around Do, who calls them useless garbage for being 5 minutes late. While he's talking, Chu crawls out of the well and tells the master that he's arrived. Annoyed, Do calls him an idiot and tells him to join the others. Later, Do explains that today's exam will last for hours and is the battle of coins. He shows them the lowest coin in the Tianwu Academy and explains that they'd be given a certain amount of coins. The task is to take other people's coins, and those who get up to 1,000 coins will be qualified to enter the Tianwu Academy. Do also adds that there are no rules, but they're to use their abilities to get coins. The only thing he adds is that the southern part of the exam area is the Forest of Red Leaves, which is the safe area where you can't take other people's coins. They can enter every 4 hours and stay for 15 minutes. After the explanation is done, Do shows them 3 bags full of different amounts of coins, which they have to fight to initially get. Once Do leaves, everyone around uses their powers to drag down the magic, but Chu is left without coins since he can't use magic. Meanwhile, some of the students get as high as 300 coins, while some have 1. Immediately, some of them plot to go for the guy with 300 first. Chu tries to climb the tree to get the last bag, but Zai notices he only has 10 coins. However, he's okay with it so that people don't target him. When Chu gets his bag, he soon realizes he has 2,000 coins, and everyone starts to chase him. While they're running, Z calls Chu an idiot for screaming out that he has 2,000 coins. Our guy is clearly beyond stupid. While they're running, Z gets tired and detours in another direction and tells Chu he'll help lead some away, but it's clear he's lying because all the men chase Chu. While the men chase Chu, he starts throwing the coins at them so they stop following him, and the men stop to fight for them. Eventually, Chu gets rid of them and enters into the woods with barely 100 coins. He remembers the safe area and decides to go there soon and chill out for a bit. When he's close to the safe area, he's ambushed by some random guy, and his tiger Utamon flees from him. The guy is amused. He came to the safe area, and he has two other friends who heard that Chu got the highest number of coins this year. Meanwhile, Lan is also ambushed by some other guys who tell her to hand over her coins. At the same time, the guy who got through the bridge with Lan the last time is also ambushed. Meanwhile, Chu asks how the people ambushing could have been candidates from the previous years too. In another place, Du gloats because he never told them that those who have once passed the Tianwu exams can't participate again. He smirks as he wonders how many new students will become prey to the old this year. Chu is threatened to give over his coins, but he explains that he doesn't have any more coins. However, they don't believe him because he wouldn't come to the safe area if he had no coins. The guy holding Chu down almost punches him, but a seal appears on Chu's neck and an explosion occurs where Chu is lying, launching him away and breaking the ground. The guys ambushing him are surprised, but Chu wonders why he feels great strength. Annoyed, the guy who held him down tries to attack him, but Chu suddenly notices that he can see his movement in slow motion and he's able to avoid it. The old students are confused, so two of them decide to attack him at once, but he still sees them move in slow motion, so he punches them in the face. To his own surprise, he knocks them into the air. Chu is surprised but later excited that he has improved. Eventually, the lady with them activates a road of thorns on the ground and cuts Chu, but he's able to easily avoid it. When the other guys attack Chu, he manages to jump off the ground at a great height, which excites him, but he soon falls face down into the ground. The others are surprised but soon ambush Chu again, so the Utamon tiger that has been following Chu stabs one of the guys in his glutes. Shocked, the guy throws the Utamon away and Chu finally wakes up. The others tell him to hand over the coins, but some vines suddenly appear to tie them up. It turns out to be Lan, who tells them she doesn't care who they are. Chu hopes this guy will save him, but is shocked when Lan ties him up too. Lan immediately takes all of their coins and leaves them hanging. This terribly annoys Chu, and he promises not to forgive Lan. With his great strength, he breaks free of the bind and chases Lan. Meanwhile, one of the old students asks his leader, Da Jie, if these new students are using hacks or cheats to fight. Somewhere else, another guy is obliterated by a strange candidate named Bao Guai, who was sent by Shui. Bao is excited to burn the others, but his accomplice tells him not to play with the dragon orbs. Shu Wei gave them to find the novice with the Dragon King power. She warns that Shu Wei won't forgive him if he breaks the dragon orb. One of the candidates tries to run from the group, but he suddenly realizes he can't move because he's under the power of the female accomplice. The guy starts to cry for help as Bao places the dragon orb on him to check if he's the one with the Dragon King power. However, if he's not the one, he's going to explode. Meanwhile, Chu runs with extraordinary speed, and he excitedly believes he's finally awakened his powers. Even though he's lost Lan, he decides to take coins from others. While that's happening, Z comforts an old man who laments that he's been trying this magic test for 20 years. After giving some advice to go start a business instead, the old guy gives Z his coins, which are almost 1,000. When he gets the coins, Chu falls down from a nearby tree and excitedly tells Z he now has magic powers. Z thinks he's lost it, but they notice a strong explosion nearby and decide to go check it out. It turns out to be Bao and the lady who have captured Lin's team and are making them explode one by one. The next person he's about to try on is Xiao, but Lin warns them not to touch her. Bao doesn't listen and places the dragon orb on her, causing her a lot of pain. Nearby, Chu and Z watch the whole thing. Z believes they're just taking coins, so he proposes they leave since even Lin can't deal with them, but Chu tells them to let go of the girl, and Z realizes his stupid friend has put him in trouble again. 10 minutes ago, Bao had thrown some explosive eyes at Lin's team, causing them to disperse. Eventually, Xiao uses her pure fire to surround Lin's sword, so he rushes at the enemy. However, the lady freezes Lin's body, but as Bao is about to blow Lin up, Xiao creates an indestructible barrier around them. However, Bao transports his explosive eyes into the barrier and blows them up. It was at that point that Z, Chu, and even Do notice the explosion. After Chu tells them to let go of Xiao, he goes in to punch Bao, but he ends up in excruciating pain. This surprises the others, and Bao wonders where this brat came from. As Bao is about to burn him, Zai throws some explosive smoke into the mix and pulls Xiao out. They soon start running, and Chu carries Shao on his shoulders. Chu wonders why his power didn't work, but Zai is surprised that Chu would steal the enemy's hostages. As if that's not enough, he notices Chu's Yudamon carrying the dragon orb in its mouth, and he realizes they're cooked. Moments later, one of Bao's explosive eyes appears in their midst and blows up. Bao and the other lady run after them and keep directing several explosions in their path, so they're forced to run to the safe area. Before they get in, the lady freezes them with her eye. As Bao releases his explosion towards them, Chu's powers are activated again and he's able to move. When he sees the explosives coming at a slow speed, he kicks the explosives out of the way, which surprises them. This further annoys Bao, who releases a meteor shower in a bid to eliminate them. However, Chu's power gets activated again and he kicks the balls away at breakneck speed that's too fast to be seen. Before Bao can react, Chu rushes at him, but the other lady puts an explosive between them that knocks Chu backward. Excited, Bao releases giant eye bombs to finish them off, and it's clear they have nowhere to run. As Bao is about to release the explosive, the lady realizes he's out of control, so she uses her neuronal control to move Zai to drag the dragon orb out of the Yudamon's mouth so it's not destroyed. Bao releases the explosives towards them, and Chu jumps to help Zai. When he does that, he mistakenly comes in contact with the dragon orb before the explosive eyes touch him. When Du sees the great explosion, it annoys him that it's happening around the safe area, and he wonders if the old students are trying to blow their cover. The other guy who passed the test with Lan also whoops the behinds of the older students who ambushed him. One of them soon apologizes and suggests offering up their coins to him, but the guy says he has enough and gives them the excess he has instead. Meanwhile, Lan realizes the exam is about to end and believes that Chu won't have anything. Where Chu is, he appears before a purple dragon who calls him an insolent human. The dragon knows his weak body will not be able to withstand the dragon orb and will be destroyed into pieces. At the end, Chu will only be his food, as that's the price of waking him up. Suddenly, the being that had been speaking with Chu tells the purple dragon he has some guts. He reminds the purple dragon that he's been in the orb for so long that he's forgotten who his owner is. Shocked, the purple dragon sees the Dragon King and apologizes for his foolishness. Eventually, the dragon asks the king why he's in the body of a mortal, so the king tells him that's not his business, but his new job is to protect this body. The Dragon King warns that he'll not forgive the purple dragon if anything happens to this body and it destroys his plans. In the real world, a giant barrier protects Chu and the others. Eventually, he gets up with strange clothing on him and can't understand what's going on. He's surprised at what happened, but he's summoned by the purple dragon, who refers to himself as the protector of the clothes of the dragon. He tells Chu that the spiritual power he can use in an instant comes from the pearl of the king of bugs, which the Dragon King consumed, which gives him superhuman speed and strength. However, the purple dragon explains that his body is too weak and won't be able to accept that power. He tells Chu that he's recovered his shattered body to save his life and has released all his seals, which will allow him to use the power of the Yudamon. Apparently, he has a power called invincibility that can defend him from every attack, but he can only use it for 12 hours. The purple dragon soon leads him, so Z asks Chu who he's talking to and where he got the clothes. Immediately, the lady tells Bao to get up because they've found their goal. Bao is surprised that the dragon clothes recognize this brat, and they realize they must catch Chu so that the Dragon King can be reborn. As they rush towards him, they're suddenly electrified by Du, who's annoyed that they broke the rules by attacking in the safe area. Since they've already found their target, the two of them decide to retreat. Later, Zai asks Chu how he suddenly got power and this new artifact. However, Do insults them again and tells them to hurry up to the entrance, but Chu realizes he doesn't have any currency. Later that night, Du meets with the candidates to start collating their results. He leads them to a door called the Door of Identity, so he asks those who have sufficient coins to come forward. Most of them realize they've failed, and they all start to lament because of how hard the test is. Even Chu wishes he hadn't chased Lan around and had focused more on gathering coins. Eventually, Do tells them that they must pass the identity door if they want to become Master Yudamon. Once inside, they will awaken the Yudamon color of their interior. The color will be different and will mean different talents. However, the coins they gathered are the way to activate the door. Apparently, a color can't be changed because it's innate, and the purer the color, the better. When they seem confused, Du reads their minds and answers all their questions angrily. Then he tells them to shut up. After that, he calls someone to come up, so the guy who won with Lan steps forward. The others are surprised he got up to 1,000, so Do asks him to put his power coins in the door. Once he does that, the door opens and lets him in. Once he's inside, Z mentions that he's heard this white wolf defeated up to 20 candidates. Shortly after, a voice announces that the guy has passed a Master Yutamon and the color he awakens is pure black. This intrigues Do, so Lan goes next. Once she drops her coins, Chu is annoyed because she took the rest of his coins. Apparently, Lan entered with over 1,000 coins, twice the required amount, and then awakened a light green color. However, Do wonders why one would be so strong and wouldn't have a pure color. When Do asks for the next, Lin steps forward. In a flashback, Lin is angry that some of his teammates got wounded and eliminated, but they didn't pass the test. He doesn't know how he'll face their teachers, but Lin tells him they tried their best. However, the third teammate offers his coins to Xiao and Lin so they can reach 1,000 for the sake of their sect of the Sword Clan. In the present, Lin awakens to a light violet color. When it's Xiao's turn, she awakens pink, which Do finds strange. After that, Z also has up to 1,000 and awakens a pure yellow. He soon starts to gloat that his color nicely fits his identity, but Do tells him yellow is the weakest and tells him to step away from the door. Meanwhile, Chu continues to lament that he didn't get the coins. Suddenly, he's summoned by the pure dragon who asks him why he doesn't go forward. Chu explains that his power coins were stolen, so the dragon tells him to check his belt. Once he does that, he finds 2 cards he got from the 2 people he defeated. The purple dragon calls it a gift and explains that he can use these objects to pass through the door. When Chu protests that he needs 1,000 coins, the dragon calls him an insolent child. The dragon tells him he's a god of antiquity, so he has no reason to lie to him. However, Chu tells the dragon he's suspicious, so the dragon calls him garbage and tells him he doesn't have the talent to become a Yutamon master. Annoyed, Chu tells him he has the ability, but he doesn't know he has screamed out in real life that he can pass through the door. He's forced to approach the door and he realizes he's finished. When he reaches the door, Chu hesitates, but Do tells him to be quick. Eventually, he drops the cards there and the door opens to him. Once he enters inside, both Lan and Z wonder how this is possible. Once he's inside, the door announces that Chu has 0 power coins, and everyone begins to laugh at him. Suddenly, the door announces that he has 1 spiritual currency and has passed a Yutamon master, but the color he awakened is colorless. Do is shocked because this is the first time a student would have spiritual currency and be colorless. Immediately, the students begin to protest that there's been foul play. However, Do shuts them up and tells them the spiritual currency is higher than power coins, and the door accepts it. But the others believe they're helping Chu cheat by giving him the highest coins before and also helping him with the Yutamon tiger. When Do tells them to shut up and move their protest to the academy, they refuse and ambush Chu. Immediately, Do tells those who pass to help Chu, but they don't move. Eventually, Z comes to stop the guys and asks Chu to tell the people where he got the currency. However, the people don't listen and begin to pummel Chu and Z. This annoys Chu, and a destructive power comes out of him and pushes the men back. This further annoys them, so they pummel him again. As Do is about to intervene, the lady who appeared with the director, Wen Hu, comes to blast the students away. Surprised, Do introduces Wen as the vice director of the Tianwu Academy, so he asks them to pledge to her. However, the men request an explanation from Wen because they believe Chu cheated. Eventually, Wen explains that the Door of Identity is the fairest representation of the Tianwu Academy. Apparently, this door determines all Yutamon masters, and no one should doubt its credibility. She insists that Chu has passed and adds that the violence they did here is against the Academy's rules. She warns Chu and Z about this occurrence but threatens they'll be expelled if another happens. This doesn't satisfy the men though, but they eventually become silent. Before they leave, Wen tells Do to take care of Chu. Later, Chu begins to cry because he's gotten a warning shortly after he got into the academy. Sometime later, Lan goes into the woods to meet Shui, who congratulates her. Lan tells Shui that the cloak has hidden her color and she hasn't attracted any attention. Eventually, Shui tells Lan that the Dragon King is in Chu, which surprises her. However, Shui explains that they need an ancient artifact hidden deep in Tianwu to release the Dragon King. Shui explains that her present mission will be to protect Chu while they find it, and Lan agrees. The next day, Chu and Z leave the exam. While Chu narrates how bad he feels about the warning they got, they run into the great tree that houses the Tianwu Academy, and it enthralls them. In the city around the tree, they both see several groups of people with different powers, and Chu is so excited to start their school life that he runs in. While he's running, he slams into teacher Sha Mu and falls backwards. When Sha sees them, she mentions that she didn't feel that the two of them would make it to the end. When Z asks her if she's their head teacher, she explains that she doesn't take care of the lion area, but the people with her are also in their year and are their class. When Z asks who their teacher is, they're shocked to find out it's Do, who calls them idiots and tells them to step forward. Later, Do assembles the new students and explains there are 3 classes, which include basic illusion, medicine learning, and full training. He later explains that his class will take 120% of their spirit and they'll lose 10 points every time they're late. If they also fail a subject, they can't participate in the final exam. After addressing them, he asks if any of them would like to run as a delegate, and Lin says he'd like to do it. Once they've done that, Do takes them to something called Shi Fang Yu so they can choose their Yudamon weapons. When they enter the building, they wonder what Shi Fang Yu is, so Xiao explains to the boy that it's where the academy keeps its weapons. After informing them, Shu is surprised that she knows so much, so Xiao explains that she got to know this from a student in a higher class than her. Shortly after, Lin comes to speak with Xiao about talking to the boys, so she apologizes. Moments later, they follow Do into a portal that leads to Shi Fang Yu, a mystical place that looks like a galaxy. When Chu starts to freak out, Do calls him a village boy and tells him not to freak out. He explains to the students that there are floating islands around them, and each student is to go to an island that suits his color so as to find his/her weapon. He tells them to choose their weapons wisely because it'll help them in the future. To be able to reach the islands, Do shows them portals that fit their colors that will send them to the island that fits them. Immediately, Chu is sent to a random island when he steps into the colorless portal. He's initially excited but shocked to see a tiny house on his island. When he enters, he laments that colorless people aren't regarded as strong. Shortly after, he finds some fire-like blue and red beings playing a board game and placing bets. It seems the Reds are winning against the Blues, so the Blues start to debate about their next move. While they're arguing, Chu makes a decision for them, and the Blues win. This shocks the Red and they wonder how this is possible, but one of the Blue spirits celebrates with Chu. Suddenly, the spirits notice Chu and ask him who he is, and they're more surprised when they don't feel his Yudamon power. Later, one of them asks him if he's really colorless because they're the protectors of the colorless island. Apparently, no one has been on this island for decades, and the last person who came was someone named Feng Qing. They explain that Feng was initially nothing when he came, but they heard that things went well for him. This shocks Chu because Feng Qing is his idol. He frantically asks them what weapon Feng used, but the beings tell Chu that he must bet with them if he wants to get a weapon. However, they tell him not to be excited because he won't be lucky this time. Chu immediately sits. While they roll the dice, Chu recalls that he grew up in a bar and he's an expert at listening for what number comes out from the dice. When they drop the dice, Chu guesses the numbers and the blue beings try to tell him to reconsider so he doesn't lose his weapon. However, Chu confidently tells him he's never lost a dice game. Meanwhile, Lan and the White Wolf guy return to Do with their weapons. While that's going on, Xiao plays a tune on a spiritual musical instrument while Lin finds a sword. On his island, Z finds some flying daggers that are specially made for him, and he wonders how Chu is doing. On Chu's island, he scares the beings there when he finally wins again, and they wonder if he reincarnated from the god of bets. At this point, Chu has won up to 50 rounds, so the beings finally allow him to choose his weapon. One of the beings splits into several fires in a circle and tells him to choose one since he's the god of bets. At this point, Chu is confused, but before he chooses, the beings ask him for 1,000 power currencies to choose. When he brings out a spiritual currency, the beings are surprised that a first-year got his hands on a spiritual currency. When they realize they're cornered, they permit him to choose. Chu randomly moves his hands around to gauge the reactions of the beings. When he gets to the smallest one that makes them the most shocked, he chooses that one. Chu soon returns with his weapons, and it makes the others laugh their eyes out. Once that's done, Du tells them to go to their new bedrooms. Later that night, Chu realizes he's chosen an average wood, so he wonders why the guys on the islands were so nervous when he chose it. They were so nervous when he took it, but he wasn't impressed. That night, a loud noise suddenly shakes up the place they're staying and some guys rob a fellow of his weapon. Soon after, the guys barge into Chu's room and demand to have his Yudamon weapon. While this is happening, some other guys break into the rooms of other students in other years to take their weapons, and they identify themselves as the Pure Color Clan. Meanwhile, Bao and the lady, who are also from the Pure Color Clan, ambush Lin, which annoys him. When they demand that he hand over his weapon, Lin doesn't fight back, but he hands it over. Meanwhile, the White white wolf guy and Lan whoop the behinds of those who came to collect their own weapons. On Chu's end, Chu hands over his wood and asks them if they know how it's used, but the guys decide to give it back to him and tell him to perhaps use it to block damages. The next morning, Z mentions that the Pure Color Clan is a powerful organization formed by students and they have great support. Apparently, Z lost half of his money for the year so he would be able to keep his weapon. Later, the novices go to meet Do, who plans to teach them the basics of using the Eudaimon power in their weapon. When he asks them to bring out their weapons, one of them mentions that the higher ranks from the Pure Color Clan stole their weapons. When Do asks who still has their weapon, Zai, Chu, Lan, and the White Wolf guy mention that they still have their weapons. When one of them laments that most of them lost their weapons, Do tells them they couldn't protect their weapons because they aren't great Eudaimon masters. He tells them to get stronger if they don't want to get disturbed from now on and calls them idiots. For those without weapons, he tells them to go look for a practice weapon. Meanwhile, Fang excitedly goes to tell Chu's mother that her husband sent a letter. Chu's mother is excited to read the letter and learns that her son is now a low-range Eudaimon master. He explains that the environment of the academy is great but just slightly dark. He mentions that there's good food and classmates too. He also adds that he's getting through even though on an average level, so he tells her not to be worried and to take care of herself. At the academy, Du comes to stop the kids while they're practicing the basics, so he proposes they do a simulation. He introduces them to someone named Shui Zhang, the champion of the Eudaimon class 2 years ago, along with his partner Huasi, who came to see the newbies and fight them. The newbies are shocked because they recognize Huasi as part of the people from the Pure Color Clan who robbed them. Meanwhile, Shui Zhang informs Huasi that the white-haired guy and the cloaked guy were the people who gave them trouble. Shortly after, Do tells Lin to step forward since he's the delegate of Lian Town. Do tells Huasi not to use too much force since they're newbies, and Xiao pleads with Lin to be careful. When they face each other, Lin angrily jumps toward Hua with great speed to cut him down with his sword. Hua jumps out of the way and releases an attack called 1,000 Hands at him while he's in the air, and that knocks Lin down immediately. Lin passes out after being hit by 1,000 fists, and Z is glad that he didn't apply to be a delegate. After that, Hua asks Du for the chance to choose his opponent, but Du is reluctant. However, when Hua promises he won't mistreat them, he's allowed. Hua chooses to fight against the white-haired guy and Lan in a 1 vs 2, and that makes Shui Zhang happy. The 2 first years accept, and the white-haired guy immediately dashes toward Huasi. While fighting, the white-haired guy attacks Hua, but he dodges it. Hua later uses his 1,000 hands on him, but the other guy blocks the attacks 1,000 times. When Hua notices that, he releases the 1,000 fists from the sky, but Lan attacks him with vines. This forces Hua to leave the white-haired guy, but the white-haired guy tells Lan there's no need for her to help him. While Lan is attacking Hua, he dodges her attacks. Later, the white-haired guy manages to slash Hua's face, but Hua quickly dodges the full attack. When they stop, the other students are surprised, but Chu and Z are excited the others were able to land an attack. While they're rejoicing, Hua tells them they're up next and they almost have a stroke. The others cheer them on, but they're certain they'll end up eliminated. Meanwhile, Master Wenhu tells the director the Pure Color Clan were more aggressive this year and it could cause the academy to lose face. The director tells her to keep watching them and asks about Chu. On the training ground, Chu gets thrown on his butt along with his wooden weapon. He also wonders why he suddenly can't use his power, so the purple dragon appears to tell him that he still cannot control the power of the Bug King. However, the dragon asks him to try using his second Eudaimon weapon, so Chu decides to try the one he got from the island. Meanwhile, Hua fights all 4 of them and they don't seem to be able to best him. Lan finds his power strange because he seems to have countless hands, so the white-haired guy realizes Hua's Eudaimon power is gathered under his cloak. Because of that, they split themselves to attack on both sides of his cloak, while Z attacks in the middle. They tell Chu to go hide, and that annoys him greatly. Once they attack both sides, this leaves an opening for Zai in the middle, but the guy easily brings out hands from his front. Chu decides to attack the back, but hands suddenly appear from behind, so he realizes he's toast. However, the Bug King power suddenly appears, allowing him to quickly avoid the hands and reach Hua. Chu quickly uses the second Eudaimon power he has, called Vacuum Seal, to absorb Hua's cloak, rendering the guy powerless. Immediately, Hua's cloak is taken away, and it's clear he has 4 hands. The cloak was hiding his other arms and giving them great speed, so it's like he has 1,000 arms. This greatly annoys Hua, but as he's about to take out Chu, Du stops him because it's just a training fight. After that, he forces them to bow down to each other and forces Chu to return the cloak. However, Hua leaves annoyed and promises the 4 students that he won't let them pass. Later, Hua is berated by the leader of the Pure Color clan because he lost his duel and soiled their name. Hua apologizes to his master and confesses that he didn't know Chu was so cunning. However, the master doesn't hear any of it and tells him to accept his correction. After that, the master asks him about the tasks he gave him, and Hua mentions that he found something called the Meteor Stone. Suddenly, he realizes he can't find the stone he kept in his cloak, and that annoys his master because that stone is important to the existence of their clan. Wasi quickly begs for forgiveness and promises to go retrieve the stone immediately. Meanwhile, Teacher Sha gathers the students to teach them about medicines. She explains that medicine needs practice and focus, so she asks them to gather some herbs in their book in 2 hours. The goal is to be able to identify these herbs, and she tells them to form teams of 2 people to do this. Chu immediately retracts from Lan, who's by his side in disgust, and sticks with Zai. However, some big guy calls Z a cutie and drags him away against his will. This annoys Chu, and he decides to find someone else. However, he soon realizes everyone has got a partner except him and Lan. Lan immediately calls him a loser and tells him to follow her, so Chu is forced to do so. While they're walking into the forest, Chu tells Lan there's nothing where they're going, because he spent most of his time staying in the forest and he knows where all the herbs are. However, Lan tells him to shut up because she doesn't need his herb. When Chu becomes annoyed, Lan tells him to get 4 of the 8 herbs while she gets the others, but Chu knows she wants him to fail. Later, Lan looks for some herbs, but she's not sure which it is. When she reaches for one, she suddenly gets a strange headache and falls off the tree. She sustains a small injury because her energy has decreased because it's daytime. Suddenly, Chu hears the sound of her fall and comes to check on her, but Lan tells him she's fine. Regardless, Chu checks her wound and realizes it's deep. Despite her protest, Chu chews one of the herbs with him and pours it on her wound to stop the bleeding. When he takes off his belt to use it to tie the wound, she misunderstands and kicks him away, and it causes her to blush for some reason. Chu starts to lament because of how ungrateful she is, and the white-haired guy watches them from nearby. Later, Teacher Sha grades Z's plant as B grade, which is good. When it's Lan's turn, she submits just 1 plant, but Sha says she can't pass with just 1 plant. Suddenly, Chu rushes there with a sack full of herbs and gets an A+ grade. Chu excitedly tells Lan he told her to listen to him, but she looks angry as her face becomes hot red. After the test, Z is released by his weird partner and he feels spent. Suddenly, Hun Mi, Chu's Yudamon, appears, so Z asks him where Chu is. Hun brings Z to where Hua has some seniors hold Chu down and demand he return what he stole. Chu seems confused about what he's talking about, but Hua punches him in the stomach. Hua assures him he only lost because he was being respectful to Do during the practice fight, but he's gonna take him out today. When Z notices that, he realizes his friend is cooked, but Chu tells Hua to fight him if he really believes he can win. Suddenly, Chu notices Z and he signals towards a direction with his mouth, so Z starts going there. However, what Chu said makes Hua laugh, so he decides to make a bet. He tells Chu he can do anything he wants with him if he wins, and Chu agrees to leave the academy if he loses. However, Chu asks to have Hua's room if he wins. Suddenly, Z arrives with Teacher Sha, and she tells the students to unhand him. After they do that, Chu tells Teacher Sha that he wants to practice with Hua, so he wants her to judge the fight. Since it's voluntary, Sha tells them they can go in full power, but they can't eliminate each other. However, Z believes Chu is playing with fire. Soon after, both boys face each other and Hua unveils his 4 hands. Immediately, Chu runs in the other direction, and that makes the crowd start to laugh. However, Hua runs after him and knocks him down with his 1000-hand attack. After being knocked down, Chu manages to run away again, but Z notices that Chu is moving at great speed. While Chu is running, he wonders how he'll fight Hua, since he'll get eliminated because his spirit power only works at random. Suddenly, the purple dragon shows up again and tells him the power of the Bug King is still in him, but he can't use it at will. Chu then asks when he can use it, so the dragon takes some time to think. While he's thinking, Hua throws Chu into the crowd and chases after him. Moments later, the dragon reminds Chu about the times the powers appeared, so Chu realizes it happens when he's in trouble. When he realizes that, the dragon tells him to stop running away and put himself in the way of real danger. Eventually, Chu turns towards Hua, and Hua swoops in to pummel his face. As our boy braces for the punch, his Bug King power becomes activated and he's able to avoid the Thousand Hands attack even at close range. At one point he catches two of Hua's hands, surprising everyone including himself. This shocks Hua, who believes what Chu just did is impossible. Suddenly, Chu's hand begins to shine bright, and Hua wonders how he suddenly got strong spiritual power like the last time. However, Hua determines not to make any mistake this time so he can retrieve the item known as Suo Shi. Meanwhile, the purple dragon tells Chu he can now fully control his spiritual power, and that makes him excited. While he's not looking, Hua attacks him again, but he manages to dodge it. But Hua manages to land an uppercut and he knocks our boy into the air. Hua rushes to meet him in the air and knocks him into the ground with over 1,000 punches. The destruction is so great that the students start to panic that Chu will get eliminated, and even teacher Sha is forced to tell Hua to stop. When Hua stops, dust covers up the entire place, but when the dust settles, Chu is revealed to be fine because he was protected by a barrier. The purple dragon is relieved he was able to use something called Jing Gang to protect Chu quickly. When the barrier dissipates, Chu is relieved he didn't get eliminated. When Hua asks Chu how he got protected, he notices Chu mentioned that the dragon clothes he's wearing are protecting him. To stop that, Hua manages to take off Chu's top so that he can use his Eudemon power again. While he's excited, the clothes suddenly electrocute Hua and knock him out, causing a small pearl to fall out of his body. So Chu goes to check on him. When he gets there, the purple dragon laughs and mentions that no one else has the right to control him. Eventually, Chu points out to the teacher that Hua seems to have passed out, so Sha announces that Chu is the winner and Hua would have to hand over his room as promised. This makes Chu and the other students excited, so Chu tells Z to bring the other students to their new dorm. Shortly after, the Lion students visit the new dorm and it's filled with much superior furniture. Chu excitedly tells the others to come stay with him, but Z points out that the house only has 2 bedrooms. When Chu suggests they turn the living room into bedrooms, Xiao excitedly steps forward, but Lin stops her and tells Chu they prefer to have their peace of mind. After Lin drags Xiao away, only Lan and the White Wolf guy are left. Z eventually suggests 2 people take a room, so Lan immediately drags Chu with her to take one room. While she drags him, she suddenly turns back and notices the horrified expressions on Chu's face and on Z's face. She quickly unhands him, so Z comes to berate her for trying to force a decision on Chu, but in reality, he's just trying to point out that he should stay with Chu in the master bedroom. When Lan gets tired of hearing him shout, she generates a huge vine in the room that almost eliminates Z. After offering to stay with Zai, Zai permits her to stay with Chu instead. Later, Lan and Shu get a room and Shu becomes afraid that Lan is trying to physically abuse him. However, Lan creates a barrier with huge vines to separate the room and tells him the poisonous vines will take his life if he tries to cross them. Shu becomes horrified and wishes to return to Zai. Meanwhile, Z pisses off the white-haired guy by coming into his space and telling him about how similar they are. The next day, Hua is whipped by Master Bei for ruining the reputation of their pure color clan. During the punishment, Bei is told that a Year 1 junior named Lin from the Sect of the Sword has come to see him. Later, Do reports Hua's actions to the deputy director, pointing out how arrogant the Pure Color group has become. However, Wen Hu points out that these kids have complicated backgrounds. Apparently some of their parents or relatives or senior management of Tianwu. She even adds that something known as Suo Shi was stolen recently, and she believes this Pure Color group must be responsible. This annoys Du, and he plans to investigate. But Wen tells him not to alert the Pure Color clan yet, but to ensure he protects Chu. That night, Chu laments about how useless his wooden weapon is because it broke after the fight. However, he's glad he has the absorber from the Bug King, and he can still win by absorbing things. When he picks up the absorber, a small crystal falls out, so he figures that he must have gotten this when he absorbed Hua's clothing. He starts to panic when he realizes this is what Hua must be after, and he mistakenly crushes his wooden weapon with the wood with him. Oddly, when he crushes the wood, he finds an identical crystal inside, and both crystals suddenly join to form something else. When Chu hears Lan walking towards him, he pretends to be sleeping and notices Lan sneak out of the window. Because of that, Chu decides to follow Lan because he believes she must be up to something bad. Chu follows her into the woods and tails her to the side of a cliff and can't find her anymore. However, Lan watches him from a nearby place and quickly continues on her journey. Meanwhile, the white-haired guy also watches something from nearby. Later, Chu looks around in the forest to find whatever Lan is hiding. While walking, he notices a portal similar to the one Sha used to transport them to the school. Meanwhile, Lan notices the white-haired guy is following her and she plans to lose him before she gets close to her exit. While she jumps into one of the trees, she gets a similar headache like the last time and collapses to the ground. As her spiritual power rapidly depletes, she releases a message to notify Shui to quickly leave. Nearby, the white-haired guy notices Lan's breath has become undiscernible, as if she has suddenly died. The butterfly message Lan sent creates a display in the sky and Shui notices it. Lan soon manages to get up. However, she's returned to her previous self because she's lost the power to use the cloak and her identity might be revealed. When the cloak becomes too heavy, she drops it and continues moving. When she gets to an elevated rock, she absorbs green magical energy into her body. Meanwhile, Chu realizes he's lost, and he becomes angry that he went this far because of the guy in the cloak. When he notices a familiar bright green light nearby, he decides to investigate. When he comes close, he realizes it's the strange girl he met, and he recalls that he saw her in the candidate dorm room the last time. He wonders what she's doing in Tianwu, but he mistakenly steps on a twig and catches her attention. When she looks back to investigate, the green energy dissipates and she passes out. Chu quickly rushes to her side and starts to panic, especially because the girl can be mauled by beasts. He doesn't want to touch her, but he's forced to carry her back to his room. While she sleeps, Chu can't believe how weird it looks to bring a girl back this late to his room. He starts to panic again, but a bright light suddenly appears from the crystal on Lan's forehead. When Chu touches the crystal, the power overwhelms him. Suddenly, he finds himself in a burning building and doesn't recognize the place. It seems familiar to him, but he soon spots a little girl standing nearby. Meanwhile, Lan walks around in the same fire and runs into the little girl too. In real life, Lan wakes up and finds Chu on top of her in a very awkward manner. Chu asks her if she'd believe him if he tries to say it's not what she thinks, but she elbows him in the chest. After whooping his behind, she ties him up and attempts to destroy him, so he quickly explains what happened and the vision he saw. She's shocked to learn he touched her golden mark and quickly puts some magical object in his mouth. When Chu demands to know what she put in his mouth, she threatens him not to tell anyone what he saw so she doesn't eliminate him. Chu promises not to tell anyone what he saw and explains that he understands if the vision is her past experience. Chu explains that he also lost his family but got adopted by his mom. He tells her that ever since he's wanted to become like Feng Tianqing and help people, even though he knows it's silly. He adds that he's just wanted to help her since he found her in the forest and that makes her blush. Nearby, Z hears the noise and comes to check on Chu, so Lan quickly escapes but leaves a necklace. Sometime later, the white-haired guy comes to see the director to inform him that their target has been identified. The director commends him but tells him not to act now, but to wait for a bit before dealing with Lan, Bao, and his female accomplice. The next morning, Xiao finds Chu pacing around. She excitedly goes to greet him, so she asks him if he's waiting for her. Suddenly, the both of them start to blush, so Chu asks Xiao if she can help him take a look at the necklace he found. She initially thinks he wants to give it to her as a gift, but is surprised to find out he's looking for the girl wearing the necklace. When Xiao asks if he knows her name, Chu attempts to mention she may be linked to Huasi, but the substance Lan put in him reacts. The substance constricts his heart and suddenly makes him cough out blood, and that scares Xiao. Chu immediately realizes the strange lady did this to him, so Xiao uses her magical power to heal him. After he feels better, Xiao asks him if the girl he's looking for is important to him, so he quickly blurts out that he doesn't really know her and it's not important. That makes Xiao slightly relieved, so she tells him to take care of himself so she doesn't worry about him, then runs away to class. Meanwhile, Lan, who is now in his male form, listens to the conversation and calls Chu an idiot. Later, Xiao goes to ask Lin about the Hua family name. Lin admits that he heard it from the master a long time ago. Apparently, the Hua family was one of the most powerful before, but they disappeared right before the last Tianmo battle. Later, he asks Xiao why he's suddenly curious about this, but she tells him it's nothing and runs off. Later, Chu runs to join them for class, so Lin gives him a map that he can use to find their destination. Chu quickly follows the map, but Lin smirks for some reason. After following the map for a while, Chu starts to realize he seems to be lost, but he's suddenly ambushed by someone. He quickly jumps out of the way and tries to activate his spiritual power, but he feels a sudden headache. He's soon ambushed by members of the Pure Color clan, who demand that he hand over the Suoshi stones. He tries to explain to them that he can't, but they begin to beat him up. When they come in to continue their attack, the shield from the dragon cloth appears and deflects the boys and protects Chu. Chu wonders why his body suddenly got weak weak when he tries to use his Eudaimon power. He soon collapses and he's approached by someone who tells him the condition of his body is bad. The person explains that he has no talent, but he has 2 different Eudaimon powers in his body. The person explains that his body will soon be destroyed like this, but Chu is too weak to respond. Meanwhile, Z shouts at Lin for making the mistake of giving Chu the wrong map. However, Lin pretends that he just mixed up the maps, so Z grabs Lin's collar and insults him. However, Zhao tries to calm Z down and offers to go inform Instructor Do. When Z turns to join the others to look for Chu, he finds that the cloak guy and the white-haired guy are missing. Meanwhile, Lan and the white-haired guy run into the woods to look for Chu. While they're running, Lan releases her butterflies to spread through the forest to look for Chu. Deep in the forest, Chu finds it hard to get up, and the guy tells him not to resist because the 2 external spiritual powers are a burden on his body. The man tells him that he will surely pass away if he uses his powers once more, so Chu asks the man who he is. Instead of answering, the man tells him to be patient and asks if the 2 stones are with him. Chu guesses the man is from the Pure Color group, but the man tells him that he'd have eliminated him if he was from the Pure Color clan. When the man grabs Chu by the collar, Chu admits to having the stone, but he explains that the 2 stones have become something strange. Confused, he asks the man how he knows there are 2 stones, but the man says it's none of his business. The man explains that the stones are named Suo Shi, and the thing they form is a key that can be used to find something called Bi Ling Long. Chu asks what Bai Ling Long is, so the man explains that after the last Tianmo battle, Feng Tianqing used 3 ancient Eudaimon weapons to build the defense shell. One of the 3 holy weapons is Bai Ling Long, and it can open the seal in Chu's body to help him recover his own spiritual power. This surprises Chu, but then some men from the Pure Color group run towards the place. When the man senses the people approaching, he leaves, but gives Chu a consumable substance that will help him for a short while. After the Pure Color group arrives, Chu reluctantly consumes the substance, but the men come close to destroying him. Nearby, Lan detects Chu's location, but Chu has managed to recover his power and has destroyed the 3 men who attacked him. Regardless, his body still feels heavy, but he notices one of Lan's beautiful butterflies. While the man who helped Chu leaves, he's suddenly ambushed by the white-haired guy. When the white-haired guy takes the man down, he realizes he's just a puppet and not a person. Eventually, the white-haired guy decides to inform the director that unknown people are approaching Chu. Later, Z helps Chu back to the dorm after Lan finds him. Z wants to inform the instructor, but Chu tries to convince him this fight is private. When Zai asks Chu how he'll handle it if the Pure Color group comes for him again, Chu remembers how the strange men told him the Pure Color group is after Bai Ling Long. When Chu asked him where Bai Ling Long is, the men told him that the Pure Color group can't find the item because it's not in this space, but he can. While they're going home, a huge rock suddenly overshadows them, but Lan pushes them out of the way. After the smoke settles, Master Bei approaches Chu and promises to handle him himself since he beat his staff. Immediately, Lan tries to attack Bei from the side, but the man teleports a huge rock to his side and pushes her into the nearby rock with him. Luckily, Lan is able to shield herself using some vines, but Bei drops some rocks to cover her as a fence. As he's about to drop some rocks on her, Z destroys the rock with his explosive daggers. Z throws some of his daggers at Bei, but Bei teleports the daggers towards Z and knocks him out. With Chu alone, Bei pushes him to the edge of a cliff and tells him to hand over Suoshi so he doesn't get eliminated. Suddenly, Chu's power is activated and he teleports in front of Bei and strikes him. However, Bei blocks his attack and pushes him backwards. Meanwhile, Lan tries to break free of the rock surrounding her. While that's going on, Bei knocks Chu off the cliff with a huge rock, but Chu is surrounded by the shield. However, when the shield disappears, Bei pulls Chu back up with telekinesis. Suddenly, Lan releases some vines towards Bei, but he blocks them with a huge stone. While Bei is distracted, Lan appears behind him and attempts to finish him off with some vines, but the guy blocks it with an energy field too. While he's doing that, he still manages to keep Chu in the air, and Chu tries to get out of his grip. He goes to the side of the cliff to help Chu, while Lan keeps fighting the man. Bei manages to push Lan back, but Lan releases a vine under his leg to pick him off the ground. After picking him up, she throws him into the sky and saves Chu. When they reunite, Bei appears once more. They immediately try to run, but they're suddenly paralyzed by a familiar feeling. Immediately, Lan sees who's doing it. She realizes she's been careless. Shortly after, the lady approaches Chu, and after scanning him, she points out that Suoshi is not on him. However, when she scans him further, she finds the key that the two crystals form and brings it out. This excites Bei because he can finally find Bai Linglong with it and take over Tianwu. With this, he plans to get back at the director after gaining the strongest power in Tianwu. After that, Bei decides to eliminate the students. Bei decides not to spare them because they already know too much about them. As he sends the rocks towards them, the rocks touch the students but don't crush them. Suddenly, Bei becomes paralyzed by the lady because she can't let him eliminate Chu. Bei believes they're betraying him, but the lady explains that they have to protect Chu. Annoyed, Bei tries to eliminate them, so he fights against the paralysis. He directs rocks at them, but Bao blocks it with his shield. Regardless, Bei continues to send rocks. So the lady reinforces control of all his nerves. The lady tells Bei that they need to talk, but Bei refuses to talk to them because they're traitors. When he notices the kids escaping, Bei sends rocks after them, but Bao destroys them with his power. After they let the children escape, Bei tells the two of them that they've let the children escape and they'll report them to the school authority. However, the lady explains that the school wants to destroy their pure color group regardless. She points out that all Bei wants is this school, and she offers that he join them so they can help him achieve this plan. Confused, Bei asks them who they are. Later, the school authorities announce that they're going to punish Hua Shi, Bei Chuan, and his pure color group. They mention that Bei Chuan has asked others to steal the school's treasures, and they also bully other students in an attempt to overtake the school. Immediately, soldiers of Tianwu are sent into the base of the pure color group to arrest Bei Chuan and his accomplices. They are swiftly arrested and are taken towards the prison, where they'll be staying for 1 month. While the other students boo them and throw things, that day, Bei is locked in prison, but he looks happy about something. That evening, Instructor Du returns the key to the director for him to check it out. Meanwhile, at the dorm, Lan finds Chu waiting for her when she steps out. To her surprise, Chu thanks her for saving him, but she simply says it's nothing and walks away. However, she blushes for some reason as she walks away. Both of you should just walk down the aisle already. Shortly after, Chu enters his room and he recalls how he was resting by the stream when the man who spoke to him before approached him again. Suddenly, the man throws the key back at him and Chu asks him why he has it and it's not returned to the school. The man refuses to show his identity but asks Chu to keep the key, but Chu refuses to. Chu insists he'll return it to the school, but the man tells him he'll change his mind. Meanwhile, Shui asks Lan if the body of their master is fine, and Lan assures him she's protecting him. Shui commends her efforts and mentions how she protected Chu even against some of the people he sent. Shui reminds her that Chu's life is presently more important than their lives, and she'll be in danger if she doesn't realize that. The next morning, Du gathers the freshmen after the semester's classes end. They're about to have their first exam, which is critical for them to pass to the next stage. To prepare for their exam, Du asks them to demonstrate the spiritual power they've learned so far so he can give them some feedback. While the students demonstrate their powers, Du gives comments. Meanwhile, Chu tries to activate his spiritual power, but is unable to. Later, he forces himself to do so again, and his entire body lights up with Eudaimon power, and he soon passes out. After he passes out, Zai runs to his side. When Xiao notices, she tries to go check on him, but Lin stops her because it's none of their business. Later, Chu gets up and tries to do it again. However, Du tells him to rest first and dismisses them. After the break, Do tells them that he's gauged their powers and the majority of them did okay. He tells them they're not as useless as when they came into the school, but Chu doesn't look satisfied with his performance, even if the others are excited. After class ends, Chu remains and Do uses telepathy to tell him not to force himself so he doesn't destroy himself. Do tells him he's seen his hard work, but he advises him to first adjust his body and take the makeup exam next year. He assures him he can do it and even offers to help negotiate with the director. Immediately, the purple dragon appears and tells Chu that his teacher is right. He reminds him that his human body can't handle such strength, so he asks him to rest and take things slowly. Shortly after, Z comes to drag Chu home so he can rest. While the students leave, Xiao and Lan keep looking at Chu because they're pretty worried. Later that night, Chu flashes back to when he was unable to use his power and how his body almost broke down when the members of the Pure Color clan ambushed him. He recalls how the strange man told him he'd pass on if he kept trying to use his power, and he recalls what happened during their training. However, Chu decides that he can't give up because he wants to be a hero like Feng Qing. He picks up the key returned to him and recalls the great strength he has demonstrated so far using the new power he has received. Then he recalls Bai Linglong, the key he was told about. Chu decides he'll just borrow this key for a short while and return it, so he steps out. He takes a tiring walk around a nearby mountain until he reaches his destination. Once he gets there, the strange man steps out, and it seems he's been expecting Chu. To set things straight, Chu tells him he only came to get back his spiritual power, so the man leads him farther into the land. As their journey progresses, Chu eventually gets tired because there's nothing around, but the man collects the key from him and some strange circles appear on the ground. The circles create a bigger circle in the sky, and the man explains that the power of Bai Ling Long is not restricted by space, so they can always find it with the key. Suddenly, some strange beings come out, and the man explains that they're the beings who protect Bai Ling Long. Immediately, the man creates a pink lance in his hand and launches it into the sky. The lances multiply and blast down towards the guardians and somehow freeze them. Immediately, the man tells Chu to get past the frozen guardians, and he does just that. After he gets past them, Chu finds a dungeon behind them and enters it. While looking around, he notices a bright room and finds a small object shining in it. Immediately he spots it. He remembers how the strange man told him that Feng Qing built their protection spell with 3 ancient weapons that include Bai Ling Long. The sight of the ancient weapons makes Chu's heart beat, but he assures himself that he'll only borrow them for a while and return them. When he tries to touch it, the light from the object overwhelms him and something in the atmosphere shifts. Immediately, Shui, who's been chilling from a tree upside down like Batman, wakes up and senses the shift. Meanwhile, Chu's body is suddenly filled with radiant power, and he's able to cause massive destruction with just one swing of his hand. He's shocked that that's the extent of his own spirit power. However, he suddenly can't find Bai Ling Long and decides to ask the guy who brought him here where he can find the item. When he steps out of the building, he realizes he can't find the guy and also notices the building has disappeared. Chu soon realizes the sun is rising, so he rushes to go do his exam and find the man later. Shortly after, the candidates gather in a hall to have the examination to become junior Yudamon masters. While they're preparing, Z decides he has to show his full power today instead of holding back. He's suddenly approached by Lan, who asks about Chu's whereabouts, but Z points out that they're staying in the same room. Shortly after, Bai Lang, aka White Wolf, steps out and some other ladies go wild when they spot him. Moments after, the judges show up, including the deputy director. Outside the hall, Chu runs to the hall with ridiculous speed and he's glad he's finally recovered. Inside the hall, Deputy Director Wen wishes the students good luck. Meanwhile, Xiao and Lan look around for Chu but can't find him. Later, Wen Hu pairs up Zai against someone named Xiao Long, who the ladies also go wild for. When Zai appears, they wonder who the heck he is, and they're certain Long will defeat him easily. When the fight begins, Long breaks the ground with his leg and directs stones at Z, but Z jumps out of the way. While Z tries to avoid the attack, Long jumps towards him. However, he doesn't know that Z had thrown needles into the air and they stuck in his back. Before Long can finish him, he becomes paralyzed, and that makes Zai the winner. After that, some other guys fight and winners are chosen. When it's Lan's turn, she wins easily and the others hope they don't get to fight her. Meanwhile, Z notices Chu has arrived, so he goes to ask him if he's here to watch. However, Chu insists he's here to fight, so he's called to the front to fight. Z is surprised since our guy hasn't recovered, and Do also wonders why Chu still came to the exams. However, Chu is paired against a guy named Nan Wu Bei, who's wielding swords that are at least 3 times his size. Wu Bei is the top student in the 6th class and he wields a huge holy weapon. Immediately, Wu rushes to attack Chu with his huge sword, but our boy just blocks it with one hand. This surprises Wu, so he goes in for another attack. However, Chu hits him once before he can attack and the poor guy is launched backwards into the wall. This display shocks the judges so much that they stand up, and Chu realizes this great display is the extent of the power of the transparent color fighter. Meanwhile, the director senses something is off. In another place, Shui and his men attack the Tianwu soldiers at the entrance of the academy, and it's clear they've been able to break through. At the hall, the others are shocked. Chu was able to defeat Wu Bei so easily. Do is still surprised, and it's clear to him that Chu has been able to access his spirit power of the transparent color. It also surprises Chu, but he suddenly collapses. While the people watch in surprise, Shui and his men break into the hall. Once they enter, Teacher Sha recognizes their mask as the mask of the Mo Wu. One of the Mo Wu soldiers blasts one of the students and fries him up. Then the others start to attack the other students. Immediately, the judges and teachers rush to protect the students, and Do uses telepathy to tell all the students to leave through the south exit. While the students run around, some of them are taken out and some of them are saved by the teachers. Do even joins in and whoops some Mo Wu behind. Meanwhile, Xiao asks Lin where they're going because they're not heading towards the south exit. Suddenly, they're ambushed by a member of the Mo Wu, but Lin suddenly shows him a sign and the guy leaves them alone. Xiao finds this odd, but Lin tells her he'll explain later. While that's happening, Z goes to help Chu up, but Shui ambushes him and throws him away. Eventually, Xiao slouches close to Chu in his badass rock and roll costume. He's glad he's finally found him, and he's glad that Bai Ling Long is finally working. Suddenly, a bright light overwhelms Shui, forcing him to run backwards. It turns out to be the director, whom Shui recognizes and refers to as the famous Feng Tianqing. This revelation shocks everyone around, and Shui reminds Feng how the last battle caused Feng so much damage. He offers to end Feng's life, but Feng tells him not to be so sure of how this fight will end. Shortly after, several soldiers of Tian Wu show up along with Bai Lang. Feng Qing tells Bai and the soldiers to go handle the other soldiers of Mo Wu, while he handles Shui. When they leave, Feng tells Shui that all his actions are under his control. He informs him that he knows about the spy he sent to the school, his intrusion into the exam, and his plans for Chu, which included Bai Ling Long. Feng tells him that it was his plan to bring him here all along, so Shui excitedly asks him how he can defeat him since he's already wounded. Shui immediately attacks him, but Feng dodges all his attacks and blocks them. Eventually, Feng lands an attack in Shui's stomach and pushes him backwards. After that, Shui transforms himself into a huge werewolf-like beast and rushes towards Feng, but the old man blocks it with a shield. To land his attack, Feng circles around to attack Feng, but Feng manages to still catch him. Regardless, Shui continues to leverage his great speed to attack Feng, and he manages to cut him on his nose. The fight is an intense one, and Shui somehow manages to overwhelm Feng with his fast punches. While he's punching, a hand suddenly holds one of Shui's punches, and Shui recognizes the person as Hui Chun Shu. It seems Feng has taken up the form of another fighter named Shu, and he tells Shui to stop fighting because he can't win. However, Shui calls him an illegitimate child and increases his strength, morphs into a more dangerous version of the monster and tells Feng that they have to continue fighting. Meanwhile, Lan takes advantage of the distraction to go check on Chu. While that's happening, Shui sustains several injuries from Feng's spiritual power, but he refuses to give up. When he tries to attack again, Feng grabs his hand and launches him into one of the nearby rocks. Can't believe this Shui guy just has all that mouth but can't back it up. Feng moves forward to eliminate Shui, but he's unable to because Shui grabs Lan and uses her as a body bag. Surprised, Feng stops his punch and asks Lan what she's still doing here. Eventually, Feng tells Shui to let her go, but Shui insists that he'll only leave after he gets Chu and points out that Lan is the last member of the Hua family. When Shui threatens to chop off Lan's neck, Lan uses her vines to tie him down and set herself free. With Lan out of the way, Feng lands his punch on Shui, who is torn into bits as he screams out Lan's name. After the huge explosion takes out Shui, Feng returns to his normal form. Nearby, Lan looks at Shui's corpse and tells him not to blame her since he was ready to sacrifice her life. Shortly after, Feng approaches Lan and tells her he'll give her whatever she wants, which surprises her. After that, Feng walks towards Chu, but he's suddenly attacked from behind by Deputy Director Wen Hu. Watch who you call your homies. Surprised, Lan goes to help up Feng Qing, who asks Wen why she's doing this. Wen doesn't answer but summons the other members of Mo Wu. She later explains that she can't let him stop her stepfather, and Feng almost has a heart attack. When teachers Sha and Do show up with the other soldiers, Feng explains to them that Wen is the staff of Ku Lu Wang. The Tianwu soldiers quickly surround the intruders, but Wen Hu points out that Feng sealed her stepfather. She points out that she knew the director was Feng, and points out that he was so arrogant that he didn't know she was with Ku Lu Wang. As Feng coughs in pain, she asks the director if he doesn't remember her. Apparently, she entered the academy with a plan to revive her stepfather, and she's been searching for secrets for many years to find the person whom he sealed her father in. Luckily, she found the person 2 months ago when they did the test on the bridge. She points out that she's not an idiot like Shueya, so she's been monitoring all his activities, especially with Bai Lang, whom he charged to guard Chu and monitor her. Because of this, she created the dummy man that she used to communicate with Chu and get him to bring down the protection barrier. In the present, Wenhu insists her stepfather, Kulu Wang, will revive. Meanwhile, Z tries to wake Chu up, but it doesn't work. As he calls out to Chu, Chu finds himself in another dimension and he tries to track Z's voice. Suddenly, he finds a magic circle similar to the one he saw when he first met the Dragon King. However, he finds a beast-like man sitting in the middle of the magic circle. The guy tries to attack him, but Chu avoids the attack and asks him who he is. Suddenly, the man turns back to him and tells him he's his old friend, but his face has changed a little. Immediately, Chu realizes this person is the spirit that gave him the power he was using. Shocked, he asks the guy who he is, but the purple dragon immediately appears to welcome the boss and refers to him as Kulu Wang. When Chu hears his name, he is shocked that this is the infamous Dragon King, so he tries to run away. However, his feet are not swift enough because Ku drags him back with his tentacles and ties him up. After subduing him, Ku reminds him that he wants power and he promises to give it to him because his body is now his. The Dragon King starts to consume Chu's body and, in the real world, Chu wakes up with a dark essence around him. Zai wonders what's going on and the Dragon King starts to speak through Chu. Ku expresses that he wants everyone to disappear and he releases a strange energy that blasts the soldiers around him away. The great power flows out of Chu, and Wenhu is excited to see the breath of Kulu Wang, which means he's revived. The directors and the others are surprised and begin to step back, but Chu suddenly transforms into another form. Immediately, Feng tells the soldiers not to panic and explains that Kulu Wang controls Chu's body but not completely. However, Feng is surprised when Ku teleports to meet Wenhu and passes out in her hands. However, Feng tells Wenhu to give up because Kulu Wang is just a body without power and she's surrounded. Suddenly, a huge explosion rips through the ground beneath them, forcing the soldiers to retreat. After that, Bao attacks the teachers with explosive eyes, but Bailing slices them up in an instant, causing them to explode in the air. After that, Bao's female accomplice also shows up. Then she freezes everyone's movement. Once that's done, Beichu shows up and tells Master Feng that he's here to get back what he deserved. He immediately sticks his hands in the ground and a magic circle appears and teleports everyone away. Shortly after, Bei teleports a part of the tree at the entrance of the academy as well as the ground underneath it into the hall. Maybe it's a funny way of telling them to eat dirt. While they're still confused, Du mentions that he read Bei's mind before he teleported and he heard something about the altar of the last battle. Immediately, Feng collapses as he tries to lead the others to where the enemies are hiding. He explains that the seal is open and they need to rescue Chu or it will be too late to do anything. Meanwhile, in Chu's mind, Kulu Wang tortures him. Wenhu and the others head into the forest until they reach a dark wasteland. When they reach a huge entrance, Wen asks Bao to take boss Kulu Wang in, and she tells the others to wait outside. Meanwhile, Master Feng and the others rush towards the place. Once inside the dungeon, Chu is dropped on a dark pink crystal. Inside of him, he continues to struggle as the Dragon King continues to overwhelm him with his dark power. His body starts to break apart as he screams in pain, but the Dragon King keeps telling him not to struggle but to become part of him. However, Chu refuses and tells Kulu Wang he won't let him. This makes Ku laugh, but Chu reminds him that his color is transparent and he will defeat him just like Feng Qing did before. However, Ku responds that Feng is just a jerk and increases the torture on Chu. Later that evening, Xiao pulls back her hands from Lin and accuses him of knowing about everything from the beginning. He admits that this is true and explains that he joined the pure color group because he couldn't take the shame. He says that he wouldn't have gotten into the school had it not been for their mate who sacrificed his coins and he can't seem to beat Chu. Confused, Xiao asks him why he's always thinking about Chu, so he mentions that he knows she loves him. However, he reminds her to also know that he loves her. When she doesn't deny it, he explains to her that Chu is the container of Kulu Wang and Mo Wu is targeting him. This surprises Xiao, and she asks Lin if he'll join Mo Wu along with the rest of the pure color group. When he doesn't answer, she turns back. Lin tells her she can't help him, but she insists that she'll try and she won't let Kulu Wang destroy everything. She accuses him of not having the dignity of a disciple of the sect of the sword and leaves. Meanwhile, Chu's eyes are now pouring out black fumes that pour out of the dungeon, and it's clear that Kulu is overtaking his body. Not long after, Feng and the Tianwu reach the dungeon and meet the members of Mo Wu at the entrance. Suddenly, the fumes coming out of Chu's body spread out into the entire area, causing some monsters in the ruins to revive. Immediately, Teacher Sha leads the soldiers to face the Mo Wu soldiers. She immediately targets Bao and knocks him out of the way, while Bai Feng and Bao's accomplice lock horns. The soldiers face the monsters, while Do knocks away the Mo Wu soldiers like ping-pong balls. Later, Bei hits Master Feng with a block of stone, but he blocks it with a huge hand. Shortly after, Wen attacks him from the side, but he blocks it. After that, some monsters come to attack him, but he burns them off. While that's going on, Chu's body begins to fade away and he becomes very tired. As he fades away, he apologizes to everyone he knows for disappointing them. Suddenly, a bright butterfly passes through the fumes coming out of the dungeon and goes to land on Chu's actual body. Meanwhile, Lan breaks through the walls of the dungeon using her vines. When she locates Chu's body, she finds him in a cloud of dark smoke. Once inside, she tries to wake him up, but it doesn't work. As she wonders what she'll do, she remembers what happened when he touched the print on her head. She immediately removes her cloak and touches his face with her mark. Meanwhile, Kulu Wang rejoices that Chu's body is almost overtaken. Suddenly, a blinding light appears out of nowhere and Lan soon appears in Chu's consciousness. When Ku spots her, he recognizes she's from the Hua family because of her color. When Chu spots her, he asks her why she's here, so she reminds him how he once said that they'll win as a team. This shocks Chu and he remembers that the person he had told that to was actually the guy with the cloak, so he figures out that the cloak guy and Lan are the same people. When he begins to overreact, Ku grabs him and tells Lan to buzz off. Ku fires his dark cloud at Lan, but she blocks it with a barrier. However, the force of the cloud is too great and she almost becomes overwhelmed. When Chu sees this, he starts to burn violently in anger and a bright light pours out of him, which surprises Ku. Suddenly, Chu's transparent power comes back since the seal is open and he's able to remove Ku's hand from his body. Outside the dungeon, Wenhu becomes worried when she senses that Kulu Wang's presence has become weak. Soon after, Xiao shows up and uses an object to cause the dark cloud in the monsters to leak out of them. She quickly rushes to the director's side to heal him, and that gives him some strength. Meanwhile, Lin watches the display from a distance. Inside Chu's consciousness, he gets up and rushes towards Ku. Ku fires a blast of dark essence at him, but he dodges it and retaliates with his own power. He soon closes the distance and attacks Ku, who blocks his blast with a dark cyclone. Ku tries to finish off Chu since he's close enough, but Lan redirects his blast forcefully with her vines. He quickly attacks her with his other hand, but she gets out of the way and wraps him with the vines. With Ku subdued, Chu tries to get close enough, but Ku releases a strong blast of energy that knocks all of them away. Once he's free of the vine, Ku covers himself with a barrier and releases a great deal of energy that further sweeps Chu and Lan away. However, Chu grabs Lan and a barrier appears around Chu which protects the two of them. Regardless, Ku forcefully breaks open the barrier and knocks them away, slightly injuring Lan. Chu rushes to her side, but the Dragon King comes in to finish them. With Lan injured, Chu rushes towards Ku, avoiding the blasts of dark energy coming from him. To help him, Lan quickly blocks Ku's sight with some vines. Before Ku can destroy the vines, Chu covers the distance and lands a strong attack on his chest. The attack shocks the Dragon King and seems to immobilize him, but he suddenly stabilizes and laughs. Suddenly, Ku starts to explode from the place he was hit, and Lan quickly drags back Chu to protect him from the outpouring of dark energy. She successfully drags him back, but she sustains the injury instead. After the wave ends, Lan is knocked down, and her green essence is sucked out by Ku, who laughs like a maniac. This shocks Chu, but Lan passes a farewell message to him as she starts to fade away. Chu cries deeply as Lan fades away in his arms, and he remembers all the experiences they've had together. In the present, she completely fades away from his arms and Chu grieves deeply. Suddenly, he becomes filled with rage and his body is consumed by transparent energy. The energy is so massive that it overshadows the place they're in, but for some reason Ku doesn't seem to be phased. Outside the dungeon, the others notice a dark smoke coming out of the dungeon, so Master Feng goes to check. In Chu's consciousness, he runs towards Ku with lightning speed. Ku initially underestimates him and tries to blast him away, but Chu gets to his side in a moment and punches him across the field. This takes out some black blood from Ku and injures him. Ku immediately tries to attack Chu with his black energy attack, but Argai blocks it with one hand and quenches it. After that, he leaps on Ku and starts to pound him into the ground with great anger. This looks like that badass final scene where Aang got tired of Fire Lord Ozai's shit. Using Lan's power, Ku pushes Chu up with a huge vine, but Chu rains down several blasts of fire at him until he's unable to sustain the vine. The attacks are so strong that a crater develops around Ku. Chu eventually approaches him and Ku manages to get up. Once he comes down, Chu returns back to his normal form. At this point, Ku approaches him and blasts him with his dark energy, hoping he still has a chance. The attack pushes Chu far back, but he bears through the pain. While he's pushing, the memory of Lan's passing comes back to him again and he deflects the attack. This time, he jumps on the Dragon King again and starts to pound his face into the ground. Suddenly, the Dragon King grabs one of his hands and rips it off, but Chu decides to bite him. Regardless, the Dragon King overpowers him and holds him by the throat after destroying his other hand. Not how I saw this going. With Chu thrashing in the air, Ku is certain he's won this time. However, Chu begins to smile, but then he coughs out blood. When he coughs out blood, Ku is forced to drop him as he also starts coughing out blood. In the real world, Lan's vines grow out of Chu's actual body. Suddenly, the fabric of the realm they're in starts to break. This surprises Ku, so he grabs a hold of Chu, but Chu coughs out a dark energy out of his mouth. This leads to a great explosion that brings down the entire dungeon. Outside the dungeon, everyone notices the surprising explosion. Immediately, Feng takes the chance to smash Wenhu into a rock. Immediately, Bei comes to help her and they both teleport. When the Mowu notice their masters are gone, they immediately escape. Feng rushes to the dungeon, but what he finds surprises him. Sometime later, Chu opens his eyes and he sees Lan standing by his side. When she comes too close, he starts to blush, but she places a hand on his chest and releases healing energy into him. Chu is instantly surprised, but he makes a funny statement that makes Lan blush and almost punch him. After she explains what happened, she pecks him on the forehead and our boy almost explodes out of embarrassment. Later, Lan steps out of the room and then Z and the others rush in to check on Chu. As Lan walks away, Xiao watches her in contempt. Later, Lan approaches Master Feng, who recalls the state in which he met Lan and Chu. Meanwhile, Wenhu and Bei report the things that happened to someone else.